It took just 10 minutes. 10 minutes for a nursing student's life to vanish on a dark New Hampshire road. In February 2004, Maura Murray's crashed car was discovered. Engine still warm, belongings scattered, but Maura was gone. No footprints, no struggle, no sign of her has ever been found. Why did Maura lie to her professors and flee campus? What was she running toward in the White Mountains, or running from? And what can happen in 10 minutes that erases a person without a trace? This isn't just a missing person case. It's a crash with no driver, a disappearance with no clues, a decade of silence with no answers. We're dissecting the timeline second by second. We're challenging every theory and following the evidence everyone else overlooked. This is the disappearance of Maura Murray, and what you miss in the first 10 seconds might be the clue that changes everything. If you're ready to look closer, watch the full story. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for cases that don't just tell stories, they demand answers. The White Mountains of New Hampshire, a place of beauty, silence, and shadows. In the daylight, their peaks glisten under the winter sun, drawing hikers, skiers, and families seeking retreat. But at night, under a February sky, they change. The forest becomes a wall of darkness. The roads turn narrow, icy, and unforgiving. The air itself feels like it's holding its breath. And on the night of February 9th, 2004, those mountains swallowed someone whole. Her name was Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. A runner, a daughter, a sister, a friend, a young woman who had plans, dreams, and a future. Until, suddenly, she didn't. On that winter night, Maura's car was found crashed into a snowbank along Route 112. Its headlights dim, its airbags deployed, her belongings inside. But Maura herself? Gone. She vanished in minutes between the time a neighbor spotted her and the time police arrived. And she has never been seen again. This is where our story begins. Not with her disappearance, but with her life. With the forces, choices, and secrets that led to this moment. Because in a case like this, the past and the present are inseparable. To know Maura Murray is to step inside the heart of a close-knit Massachusetts family. Born on May 4, 1982, she was the fourth of 5 children raised by Fred and Lori Murray in Hanson, Massachusetts. Her father was a man of persistence and principle, who worked tirelessly to support his kids. Her mother, though later separated from Fred, remained deeply connected to her children's lives. Maura's siblings remember her as bright and competitive, a natural athlete who excelled in running. Her older sister, Kathleen, would later recall how Maura could sprint past anyone on the track, her determination etched into every stride. She wasn't just fast. She was smart, a strong student who combined athleticism with academic drive. Her achievements carried her all the way to West Point, the United States Military Academy. There, she began her college years with discipline and ambition. But West Point was not her path forever. The rigid structure, the military lifestyle, they didn't fit the young woman who longed for something else. She transferred to UMass Amherst, pursuing nursing, a profession of care, compassion, and resilience. Friends described her as kind, funny, sometimes quiet, but fiercely loyal. The kind of person who could light up a room with her smile, yet who carried burdens beneath the surface. Burdens no one fully saw coming. The first week of February 2004 seemed ordinary. But in hindsight, it revealed the weight pressing down on Maura's shoulders. On Thursday night, February 5th, she was working her campus job as a security desk attendant. At around 1 a.m., she received a phone call. The details of that call remain debated, but what followed is undeniable. Maura broke down. Her supervisor found her crying at her desk, barely able to speak. Through her tears, she muttered only 2 words: "My sister." Her sister Kathleen was battling alcoholism and had recently been released from rehab. That night, she relapsed. The call shook Maura to her core, pulling her into a storm of fear and helplessness. Her supervisor gently escorted her back to her dorm. But the image lingered, a young woman, normally composed, unraveling under the weight of family pain. This wasn't just a single crack in her armor. It was a glimpse of stress she had been carrying. Academic pressure, relationship struggles, family troubles, secrets. 2 days later, on Saturday, February 7th, Maura's father Fred visited her in Amherst. They shopped for a new car, a practical necessity for a young woman with long commutes and unreliable transportation. That night, Maura borrowed Fred's Toyota Corolla to attend a dorm party with friends. The night was meant to be casual, carefree. But as the early hours of Sunday morning arrived, something went wrong. On her drive back, Maura lost control and crashed into a guardrail. The accident was not catastrophic, but the car was damaged. Police filed an incident report. No charges, no arrests. Still, Fred would later recall the worry in her voice when she called him. She promised to pay him back for the damage. He assured her it was fine, but inside, Maura may have felt yet another layer of guilt, another weight she couldn't quite shake. By the time Monday arrived, something in her shifted. Monday, February 9th, was different. Maura emailed her professors, telling them there had been a death in the family. She requested time away from class, but there had been no death, no funeral, no emergency. It was a lie. She packed some clothes, toiletries, her textbooks. She even took a stuffed animal, a small comfort from childhood. From her dorm walls, she removed decorations, almost as if she were preparing for something more than a short trip. At around 3:30 p.m., Maura withdrew $280 from an ATM. Surveillance footage showed her calm, collected, wearing a dark jacket and her hair pulled back. She then purchased alcohol, bottles of wine, Bailey's, Kahlua, vodka, enough for several days. No one knows if she intended to drink alone, or if she expected company. By late afternoon, Maura climbed into her black Saturn sedan and began driving north, toward New Hampshire, toward the mountains she had loved as a child. The black Saturn was not a reliable car. It had engine troubles, but still she drove. Her route took her along Interstate 91, weaving through Massachusetts, Vermont, and finally into New Hampshire. As the miles stretched on, the winter evening descended into icy blackness. By 7:27 p.m., she was deep into rural Haverhill, New Hampshire, along Route 112. That's when a neighbor heard a loud thump outside her house. She looked out and saw Maura's Saturn lodged into a snowbank, its front end damaged, hazard lights blinking against the white snow. The neighbor watched. A young woman stood beside the car. She seemed uninjured, though shaken. Moments later, a school bus driver passing by noticed the same scene. He stopped, rolled down his window, and offered help. Maura declined. She told him she had already called AAA. That help was on the way, but records show she hadn't called. Her cell phone made no such connection. The bus driver left, uneasy. He drove home and phoned police at 7:42 p.m. Police were dispatched immediately. By 7:46 p.m., just minutes later, officers arrived at the scene. The car was still there. The airbags deployed. The windshield cracked. Inside, they found her belongings, her school books, the alcohol, even her stuffed toy. But Maura was gone. No footprints led into the snow. No signs of struggle. Just an empty road, a wrecked car, and silence. In less than 10 minutes, Maura Murray had vanished. What happened in that narrow window of time? Did she run, frightened of another crash, another consequence? Did someone pick her up, offering a ride that became something darker? Did she step willingly into another life, leaving everything behind? Or did the mountains themselves claim her, swallowing her into their frozen depths? No one knows. But what we do know is this: the moment she disappeared, the world around her shifted. Her family's lives would never be the same. Investigators would be haunted by missed opportunities. And strangers, thousands of them, would spend years obsessed with her fate. Because Maura Murray's story is not just about a disappearance. It is about the fragility of life, the weight of secrets, and the haunting silence left behind when someone simply vanishes. And so, we arrive at the vanishing point. A young woman, a snowy road, a crashed car, and then nothing. The world moves forward, but the question remains frozen in time. Where did Maura Murray go? And why, on that cold February night, did she never come home? The clock was ticking. 7:27 p.m., a neighbor hears the crash. 7:42 p.m., a bus driver calls the police. 7:46 p.m., an officer arrives on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Less than 20 minutes had passed. And in that short stretch of time, Maura Murray, a 21-year-old student with her life ahead of her, was gone. Her black Saturn sat abandoned in the snowbank. The driver's side was damaged, the airbags deployed. The windshield bore a spiderweb crack, a silent reminder of impact. Inside were her possessions: clothes, books, alcohol, her stuffed animal, untouched, as if she had simply stepped outside and vanished into thin air. But Maura was nowhere to be seen. And so began one of the most puzzling and frustrating searches in modern American history. When Sergeant Cecil Smith of the Haverhill Police Department pulled up to the crash site at 7:46 p.m., he expected to find a stranded driver waiting for help. Instead, he found silence. The car was locked. The lights were off. No one was inside. The school bus driver who had stopped earlier told him about the young woman. She seemed shaken but declined help. She said AAA was on the way. But Smith knew better. There was no record of AAA being contacted. What unsettled him most was the emptiness of the scene. No footprints led into the woods. No signs of someone walking away. It was as if Maura had melted into the night. Police began canvassing the area. Neighbors were questioned. Some claimed they saw Maura near the car. Others insisted she was gone before authorities arrived. One woman, living only 100 yards away, said she kept watch from her kitchen window. She saw the car. She saw the bus driver stop. She saw the police arrive. But Maura? She claimed Maura was gone in the minutes between. The contradictions only deepened the confusion. Was Maura hiding, running, or already in someone else's vehicle by then? The night air was brutal. Temperatures dropped below freezing. Snow lined the road. If Maura had wandered off into the woods, she faced deadly odds. Yet the initial search was limited. Police treated the crash as a routine single-car accident, not an emergency disappearance. Perhaps she'd walked to a friend's house. Perhaps she didn't want to be found. But the hours slipped by, and with them, the precious window to find her alive. By the next morning, word spread. Maura's car had been found, but she was missing. Her father, Fred, received the call no parent ever wants. He rushed to New Hampshire, panic in his voice, dread in his chest. He knew his daughter. He knew she wouldn't simply vanish. Something was wrong. Fred demanded action. Searches. Answers. Anything. But the police response, in his eyes, was too slow. Too cautious. Too willing to consider that maybe, just maybe, Maura had left by choice. Fred would never accept that. To him, and to Maura's family, she was in danger, and every second mattered. Over the next several days, the search expanded. Police, volunteers, dogs, and helicopters combed the woods surrounding Route 112. Cadaver dogs were brought in. One reportedly tracked Maura's scent a short distance from the crash site, only to lose it abruptly. Some believe this indicated she had gotten into another vehicle. Search teams waded through snow, scanning ravines, frozen streams, and abandoned cabins. Every creak of a tree, every crunch of snow, felt like it might reveal something. But they found nothing. No footprints, no discarded clothing, no signs of struggle. It was as if the woods themselves had conspired to erase her. As the days turned into weeks, theories began to swirl. Some officers believed Maura had been drinking, crashed her car, and fled the scene to avoid trouble. If she was hiding, she could have succumbed to the cold. But if that were true, why wasn't her body found nearby? Others suspected foul play. A stranger, perhaps, or someone she had arranged to meet. Then came the possibility no family wants to hear, that maybe, just maybe, she had left voluntarily. That she had walked away from her life, her studies, her family, and chosen to disappear. But Fred Murray rejected that idea outright. His daughter, he said, wouldn't abandon her loved ones. She was in trouble. Someone had taken her. The relationship between the Murrays and law enforcement grew tense. Fred accused police of mishandling the case, of failing to treat it with urgency from the start. He pushed for more resources, wider searches, greater transparency. Police, meanwhile, defended their actions. They insisted they had searched thoroughly. They argued that without evidence of foul play, their hands were tied. But to the family, every delay, every hesitation, felt like time slipping away. Time they could never get back. News of Maura's disappearance spread quickly. Newspapers covered it. Local TV stations broadcast appeals. Her picture, a young woman with brown hair, hazel eyes, and a bright smile, was plastered across posters and flyers. People began to speculate, to wonder, to theorize, and soon, strangers far beyond New Hampshire became invested in her fate. The case captured the imagination of the public, not just because a young woman was missing, but because of the sheer strangeness of it. A car crash, a brief window of time, and then nothing. It was the kind of story that begged for answers, and yet resisted them at every turn. Despite repeated searches, the wilderness gave up no secrets. The woods were dense. Snow covered any trace. If Maura had wandered off, her footprints had long since vanished. Helicopters circled overhead. Volunteers scoured trails. Police dogs sniffed the ground. But there was nothing. The silence of the forest seemed to mock them, as if it alone knew the truth. In the weeks following her disappearance, the case grew colder. Tips came in, some sincere, some false. Sightings were reported, but none confirmed. Theories hardened. Was it foul play? A staged escape? A tragic accident hidden by nature? But for Fred Murray and Maura's family, one truth was clear. Their daughter was gone, and the search had only begun. The first days after a disappearance are the most critical. And in those days, Maura Murray slipped further from reach. The crash was real. The car was real. The silence of the woods was real. But where was she? And why? In one of the most combed-over search areas in New England, was there no trace at all? This was no longer just a missing persons case. It was becoming something else. A puzzle without edges. A mystery that would outgrow its time and place. A story that would soon pull in strangers from across the country, and even the world. Because the disappearance of Maura Murray was not just the story of one young woman. It was the story of how a mystery can consume everyone it touches. When the trail of facts ends, theories begin. And in Maura Murray's case, theories are not simply whispers in the dark. They are the lifeblood of a mystery that has survived for decades. When there is no body, no witness, and no confession, the void must be filled with possibilities. And it is in that void where imagination and obsession have thrived. Every great mystery is not only about what happened, but about what could have happened. And in the story of Maura Murray, those possibilities stretch across a spectrum of tragedy, choice, and horror. Some believe she succumbed to the unforgiving elements, lost in the snow and woods, her body hidden by nature itself. Others are convinced she chose to vanish, to escape a life of pressures and secrets, and to begin anew in silence. Still others see a darker shadow, abduction, foul play, perhaps a predator who struck at the perfect moment. And a few hold to the grim idea that she took her own life, consumed by stresses we can only glimpse from the outside. To understand this case, one must walk through each possibility slowly, carefully, without rushing to judgment. Because the truth, if it still exists in the silence, hides in the tension between what we know and what we imagine. The first theory, the one many law enforcement officers leaned toward in the early days, is the simplest, that Maura crashed her car, wandered off into the woods, and succumbed to the freezing New Hampshire night. On the surface, this makes sense. The night was cold, the snow deep, and Maura was far from home. Witnesses saw her at the crash site, but within minutes she was gone. The police dogs tracked her scent a short distance up the road before it vanished. Could she have staggered into the darkness, disoriented, and collapsed in the snow? Could her body have been overlooked, buried beneath storms and shifting landscapes? At first glance, this theory carries weight. Many missing persons in rural areas meet their end not through violence, but through the indifferent hand of nature. Hypothermia can take a life quickly, especially in sub-zero temperatures. Disorientation sets in, then a false warmth, then a quiet slipping away. Yet this theory begins to unravel under scrutiny. If Maura had wandered into the woods near the crash, why was her body never found? The area was searched exhaustively. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers, police. For years, the woods around Route 112 were combed by strangers and locals alike, each hoping to stumble upon a clue. But nothing surfaced. Not a scrap of clothing, not a piece of jewelry, not a bone. Some argue that nature can keep its secrets well. Animals scatter remains. Snow buries them. Time erases traces. But for over 20 years, in a region combed so thoroughly, by so many eyes, it strains belief. Cases like this usually yield something, even decades later. In Maura's, the silence has been absolute. Others note the direction of her scent trail. The dogs followed her toward the road, not into the forest. Did she get into another car? Did she leave on foot in a direction that avoided the main search zones? Or did her scent simply vanish due to contamination or the icy wind? These inconsistencies chip away at the idea of a simple accident. And yet, this theory remains one of the most natural, the most grounded. It asks us to believe not in conspiracy, but in tragedy, that a young woman in distress stepped into the night, and that the cold claimed her. It is an explanation that requires no villains, only the indifferent cruelty of winter. But not everyone accepts that. The second great theory pulls in the opposite direction. Instead of a tragedy born of circumstance, it imagines a choice. A voluntary disappearance. Maura, some argue, was not running from a car crash or the cold. She was running from her life. The days before her disappearance paint a picture that fuels this belief. She had lied to professors about a death in the family to excuse absences. She had been caught using a stolen credit card. She had crashed her father's car just days before. And the night she vanished, she packed personal belongings from her dorm room into boxes and took them with her. A gesture that feels final, as though she was closing a chapter. What if, some suggest, she planned it all? She withdrew money from an ATM, bought alcohol, printed directions to a region far from her routine. Could it be that she meant to disappear, to slip away and build a new life? There is precedent. Stories abound of people who shed their identities and vanish. Stress, shame, or longing for escape can push individuals to do the unthinkable. Perhaps Maura, burdened by academic pressure, personal missteps, and family conflict, saw in that snowy night not a dead end, but a door. This theory has its allure. It offers a strange kind of agency. The idea that Maura's disappearance was not forced upon her, but chosen. That she may still be alive, living quietly somewhere, her name changed, her past buried. For her family, this possibility is both a flicker of hope and a knife twist. Hope, because it means she might still breathe. Pain, because it means she left them behind by choice. But this theory, too, frays at the edges. Disappearing completely is not simple, especially in the modern age. Financial records, digital footprints, social security numbers, all leave trails. In the 20 years since, no confirmed sign of Maura has surfaced. No bank activity, no employment records, no medical traces. And then there is the question of her state of mind. To vanish deliberately requires not only will, but planning. Was Maura truly prepared for that? Or was she merely running away for a few days, intending to return once the storm of her troubles had passed? If so, something else must have happened to prevent her return. Still, the voluntary disappearance theory persists, fueled by the tantalizing gaps in her last days. Her packed belongings, her lies to professors, her quiet withdrawal of cash. These are not the marks of someone expecting to return quickly. They are the whispers of someone preparing to sever ties. And so we are left with two opposing images. Maura, lost to the woods, her life ended by chance and cold, or Maura, alive somewhere, her life remade by choice and silence. Both are plausible. Both are painful. Both leave the same hole in the hearts of those who loved her. Yet neither theory explains everything. Neither resolves the contradictions, the missing pieces. And that is the cruel genius of this case. Every answer opens more questions. Every possibility leaves shadows unlit. Before long, darker theories emerge. If Maura did not die in the woods, if she did not choose to vanish, then perhaps someone else made the choice for her. Perhaps she was not alone that night. Perhaps the silence hides not nature, nor escape, but violence. If Maura did not die in the woods, and if she did not slip away to start anew, then we are left with one of the most haunting possibilities. That someone else entered her story that night, and that person's actions determined her fate. Abduction is a word that chills. It transforms an accident into a crime, a disappearance into an act of violence. To believe Maura was taken is to believe that another human being saw her vulnerability, saw her stranded on the side of Route 112, and exploited it. There are details that give this theory weight. Witnesses described seeing her car, its airbags deployed, but no sign of her. A bus driver spoke with her briefly, offering help, which she declined. Minutes later, she was gone. How could she vanish so quickly, so completely, unless another vehicle stopped, unless another set of headlights appeared out of the dark? The scent trail dogs tracked her up the road, toward the direction of a car's approach, before it ended abruptly. Dogs do not lie, but their trails can fade when someone enters a vehicle. Did Maura climb willingly into a stranger's car, hoping for a ride? Did she know the driver? Or was she forced? The rural roads of New Hampshire are lonely at night, but not empty. Locals drive them. Strangers pass through. Truckers, hunters, workers on late shifts. Among them could be a predator, someone with violence in mind. Other cold cases remind us that predators often hunt in moments just like these: an isolated woman, a disabled vehicle, a chance encounter. Consider the case of Brianna Maitland, who disappeared in Vermont in 2004, only a year after Maura. She too was young. She too left her car abandoned on the roadside, and she too vanished without a trace. The parallels are unsettling, and to many, they suggest not coincidence, but pattern. Two young women, the same region, the same mystery. The abduction theory offers explanations for things the other theories cannot. Why Maura's body was never found. Why her belongings were left behind in the car. Why her scent trail ended so abruptly. Abduction provides a framework where silence makes sense, because someone deliberately silenced her. Yet it is also the theory most clouded by speculation. Who was this abductor? A random stranger? A local with knowledge of the roads and woods? Someone who knew her from her past life in Massachusetts? The lack of evidence cuts both ways. It supports the idea of a clean abduction, but it also leaves nothing concrete to prove it. There are those who believe Maura willingly got into a car, not with a stranger, but with someone she knew. Perhaps a friend, a contact, even a secret relationship. Perhaps she had arranged a meeting, a rendezvous that night, and the crash was merely a detour. In this telling, she entered a vehicle by choice, but the night did not end the way she expected. The most harrowing possibility is that foul play was not random, but targeted. That someone close to her, someone familiar, was waiting. But with no evidence, this remains an echo in the dark. Another theory, one often whispered but rarely embraced fully, is that Maura took her own life. Suicide is a heavy word, one that carries stigma and sorrow, and to apply it to Maura requires careful thought. Supporters of this theory point to her mental state. The days before her disappearance were filled with stress, the car crash, academic struggles, legal trouble. Her decision to lie to professors, to withdraw cash, to pack belongings, all could be read as the actions of someone preparing to end her life. The alcohol she purchased that night adds to this interpretation. Was she planning to numb herself before a final act? Was her drive into the White Mountains not an escape, but a pilgrimage to solitude? But here, again, the evidence falters. No note was found. No body has been discovered. Those who knew Maura best describe her as resilient, resourceful, determined. A young woman who faced difficulties, yes, but not someone spiraling toward despair. Theories of suicide often emerge in missing person cases, but without tangible support, they can feel like projections more than conclusions. Still, it lingers, a possibility in the spectrum of explanations. If Maura did take her own life, it means her story ended that night, but it leaves open the question of where and why no trace has ever been found. The theories of abduction and suicide often collide with another question. Was Maura's disappearance the work of a stranger or of someone local? The rural North Country of New Hampshire has its own shadows. Cases of violence, unsolved crimes, whispers of predators who passed through unnoticed. Some investigators believe Maura fell victim to a crime of opportunity. A local who saw her car, who saw her vulnerability, and who acted swiftly. The intimacy of small towns means that such possibilities are both chilling and hard to confront. No one wants to believe a neighbor could be responsible. Others suggest it was a stranger, someone passing through. A truck driver, a traveler, a drifter. This explanation distances the crime from the community, framing it instead as bad luck, that Maura crossed paths with the wrong person at the wrong moment. Both are possible. Both remain unprovable. To better understand why these theories persist, it is useful to compare Maura's disappearance to other cold cases. Consider the disappearance of Jennifer Kess in Florida, 2006. A young woman vanishes, her car abandoned, her fate unknown. Consider the case of Patricia Meehan in Montana, 1989. A car crash on a rural road. The driver gone when help arrived. Sightings scattered but unconfirmed. These cases echo Maura's, creating a haunting chorus of patterns. Vehicles abandoned, young women gone, silence left behind. The human mind craves resolution. We study these cases not only to solve them, but to find meaning in the unknown. When patterns repeat, we believe answers must exist within them. And yet, with Maura, no single theory satisfies. Each holds fragments of truth, but none hold it all. The accident theory explains her sudden disappearance, but not the lack of remains. The voluntary disappearance theory explains her belongings and her lies, but not the decades of silence. The abduction theory explains her vanishing trail, but not the absence of evidence. The suicide theory explains her stress, but not her resilience. In this tension lies the power of the mystery. Maura's story does not fit neatly into a single narrative. It resists closure, resists categorization. It lives instead in the space between. For her family, the weight of these theories is unbearable. Each one represents not only a possible truth, but a different kind of grief. If she died in the woods, they grieve her suffering. If she disappeared voluntarily, they grieve her choice. If she was taken, they grieve the cruelty of another. If she ended her life, they grieve the depth of her pain. Every theory is a wound. Every possibility is a scar. And yet, despite the pain, the search for truth continues. Because in every theory, there is still the chance, however slim, of answers. And in the world of cold cases, hope can live in the smallest of details, in the most fragile of possibilities. As the years stretched on, the theories multiplied, debated endlessly online, in books, in documentaries. Maura's disappearance became a cultural touchstone, a symbol of mystery itself. But for those who knew her, who loved her, these theories are not entertainment. They are the battlefield where grief and hope collide. In the end, the question is not only which theory is true. It is why this case continues to haunt us, why we cannot let it go. And perhaps the answer is simple. Because in Maura's silence, we hear echoes of our own fears, our own unanswered questions. And we are left not with answers, but with the weight of possibility. Theories that circle, overlap, contradict, and yet endure. The truth may be hidden still, but the search itself has become part of the legacy. What happened to Maura Murray remains uncertain. But what is certain is this: her disappearance changed everything. It changed her family, it changed the true crime landscape, and it changed the way we think about the unsolved. Theories are the scaffolding we build to reach for truth. But scaffolding is not the structure itself. Beneath it lies something deeper, something harder to grasp, the aftermath of mystery. And that aftermath is where our story goes next. Time is the cruelest force in any disappearance. At first, every hour matters. Every minute feels urgent. But as days turn to weeks, and weeks into years, the silence deepens. And so it was with Maura Murray. Her case began as a race against the clock, a desperate search in the snow-covered woods of New Hampshire. But as the years passed, that race became a marathon, a long, grinding search that stretched across decades. The hours after Maura vanished were critical. By 8 p.m. on February 9, 2004, police stood over her abandoned Saturn on Route 112. But without signs of struggle, without footprints leading into the woods, without a body, they had little to work with. Some officers believed she had simply run away from the crash. Others suspected she had been picked up. But one thing was clear: the trail was already going cold. That night, a dog team attempted to track Maura's scent. They followed it only a short distance, just 100 yards east of the car. Then it vanished. It was as if she had been lifted from the earth itself. The following days brought a frenzy of activity. Search teams poured into Haverhill. Locals volunteered, trudging through knee-deep snow with flashlights. Helicopters scanned the ground with infrared cameras. Cadaver dogs sniffed through thickets and streams. For days, the woods echoed with shouts of her name, Maura. But the mountains answered only with silence. Fred Murray was relentless. He refused to accept that his daughter had simply wandered off. He begged police to consider foul play. He walked the roads himself, scanning every ditch, every frozen stream, every abandoned cabin. But nothing came. No footprints, no body, no sign of Maura. By March, the snow began to thaw. Searchers hoped the melting ice might reveal something hidden. A clue, a piece of clothing, remains. But again, nothing. It was as if Maura had been erased from the landscape. The investigation, too, began to slow. Leads were chased, but dead ends multiplied. A tip about a local man with a troubled past, false. A rumor she had been spotted in Vermont, unconfirmed. A theory she had run away to start over, unsupported. Every hope turned hollow. And for her family, the silence was unbearable. Fred Murray refused to stop. He traveled back to New Hampshire week after week, plastering missing posters, talking to locals, demanding answers. He clashed with police, accusing them of negligence, even of hiding information. He spoke to journalists, urging them to keep her story alive. To Fred, the idea that his daughter had simply wandered off into the woods was absurd. He was certain someone had taken her, but proving that was another matter entirely. The case had no evidence, no witnesses, no suspects, just an empty car and a vanished daughter. In the years that followed, the search widened. Psychics contacted the family, offering visions of Maura's fate. None proved true. Private investigators stepped in, hired by Fred and supporters. They scoured abandoned houses, interviewed suspicious locals, and mapped the roads around Haverhill. Dogs were brought back repeatedly, sniffing old locations, sometimes alerting, sometimes not. In 2006, 2 years after her disappearance, searches focused on a nearby house. Cadaver dogs alerted to possible human remains. A carpet sample was taken, but no charges were filed and nothing came of it. It was a cycle that repeated, a burst of hope, followed by silence. As the years dragged on, Maura's name faded from headlines. New cases took over the news cycle. Other disappearances captured public attention. But for those who remained, the silence was deafening. Fred Murray, still relentless, continued his crusade. He demanded the FBI take over. He begged for new searches. He chased every rumor, every tip, every whisper. Her sister Julie spoke of the pain of uncertainty, of living in limbo, not knowing if Maura was alive or dead. For the family, time did not heal. Time only sharpened the wound. Then, in the late 2000s, Maura's case found new life. The internet had transformed since 2004. Blogs and forums gave way to true crime podcasts, documentaries, and social media campaigns. And Maura's story, mysterious, haunting, unsolved, became one of the most talked about cold cases in America. The Disappeared television series featured her case. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. Journalists retraced her final days. The case became legend. And with that attention came new leads, or at least new noise. In 2017, over a decade after she vanished, interest surged again when a house near the crash site was searched. Ground-penetrating radar suggested possible disturbances beneath the basement floor. For a moment, hope, or fear, returned. Had Maura been there all along? But when the concrete was broken, nothing was found. Another lead, another disappointment. As the years wore on, Maura's family carried on in different ways. Fred continued to demand action. He appeared in documentaries, pleading for anyone with knowledge to come forward. Her siblings spoke less publicly, but the pain was always there. In their eyes, in their voices, in the silence when her name was mentioned. The hardest part was the not knowing. Grief needs an answer, but Maura's story gave none. With every new wave of attention, theories returned. Some insisted she had died the night of the crash, hidden somewhere in the woods. Others argued she had escaped her life intentionally, choosing a new identity. Still others clung to foul play, the belief that someone on that lonely road had taken her. The internet only amplified the debate. Some discussions were thoughtful. Others turned cruel, accusing family members or strangers of involvement without evidence. The search for Maura had become not only a hunt for truth, but a theater of speculation. By the 2010s, true crime was no longer a niche. It was mainstream. Podcasts, YouTube channels, Reddit communities, all dissected the disappearance. Every document was posted. Every interview was analyzed. Maps were made, timelines built, theories shared. The case had become a living puzzle, updated and debated daily online. For some, it was an obsession. For others, a cautionary tale. For her family, it was both hope and torment. Year after year, searches continued. Volunteers still walked the woods. Journalists still returned to Route 112. Fred Murray, even in declining health, refused to give up. Every anniversary brought fresh coverage. Every milestone reminded the world she was still gone. And still, no answers. By the late 2010s, Maura's case had entered a rare category. Not just a cold case, not just a missing person story, but a cultural mystery. Her face had become iconic in true crime circles. Her story had inspired books, documentaries, endless online discussions. And yet, beneath all the speculation, the truth remained hidden. One young woman, one winter night, and a trail that ended at a snowbank in rural New Hampshire. The long search for Maura Murray was not just a hunt for a missing person. It became a test of endurance. For her family, for investigators, for anyone who dared to chase the truth. It revealed the limits of evidence, the cruelty of time, the power of mystery. And yet, through it all, the question never changed. Where was Maura? It has been more than 20 years since Maura Murray vanished into the cold New Hampshire night. 2 decades of silence, 2 decades of questions, 2 decades without answers. And still, the search goes on. Her story has become more than a case, more than a disappearance, more than a headline. It has become a legacy of grief, a legacy of obsession, a legacy of hope. And in that legacy, we see not only the story of one missing young woman, but a reflection of ourselves. Time does not wait. Years passed. Technology changed. Generations grew. But on Route 112, the snow still falls in silence. Every February, the anniversary of Maura's disappearance returns like a wound reopened. Her family gathers, friends remember, and strangers who never knew her pause to reflect. Because Maura's case is not frozen in 2004. It lives. It breathes. It echoes in every new headline, every new cold case, every missing poster pinned to a wall. For the Murray family, the years have been both merciless and defining. Fred Murray fought tirelessly for his daughter. For years, he walked those woods, searched those rivers, demanded answers from police. He became a warrior for truth, even as age and health began to weigh on him. Julie Murray, Maura's sister, has carried that torch into the modern era. She has become the voice of her sister's story, speaking publicly, writing, pushing for new leads, and refusing to let the world forget Maura's name. For them, the pain is not in what they know. The pain is in what they don't. No grave to visit. No remains to bury. Only questions. Only silence. And that silence is the cruelest burden of all. The world has changed since 2004. DNA testing has advanced. Cell phone forensics have grown sharper. Ground-penetrating radar can now scan deeper with more precision. And in other cold cases, these advances have brought long-awaited answers. Remains once thought lost have been found. Killers once thought untouchable have been unmasked. And yet, in Maura's case, technology has not yet broken the silence. There are no fingerprints left behind, no usable DNA, no new cell data. The trail remains cold. But hope lies in the fact that technology is still advancing. Tomorrow's tools may reveal what today's cannot. Few missing person cases have gripped the public imagination the way Maura Murray's has. Her story became one of the first great internet mysteries, dissected on forums, debated on podcasts, re-examined in documentaries. She became, in a way, a symbol, a face for the unsolved, a voice for the vanished. Her story is studied in universities, cited in discussions about media ethics, and referenced whenever the power of online communities is considered. The mystery of Maura Murray became bigger than a case file. It became part of our culture. But with that cultural obsession came a darker side. For years, strangers online speculated wildly. They accused family members, invented conspiracies, and blurred the line between curiosity and cruelty. The Murray family often found themselves not only grieving a daughter and sister, but defending themselves against suspicion, criticism, and invasive questions. It raised uncomfortable truths. Why do we obsess over missing women? Why do some cases capture the spotlight, while others fade into obscurity? And how do we balance curiosity with compassion? Maura's case became not only a mystery to solve, but a mirror held up to our society. In recent years, the search has not ended. In 2017, the basement of a nearby house was dug up after radar suggested possible remains. Nothing was found. In 2019, the New Hampshire State Police created a cold case unit, giving Maura's disappearance renewed official attention. Her family continues to push for transparency, urging investigators to release more files, more details, more truth. And every so often, a new tip emerges, a new possible sighting, a new whisper of hope. But each time, silence follows. As the years stretch on, the questions remain. Did Maura walk into the woods that night, overwhelmed and lost, never to return? Did she choose to disappear, building a new life far from the one she left behind? Or did someone take her, a stranger, a local, someone who knew the roads that night? Each theory has its defenders, each has its flaws, but the truth still waits. And maybe, just maybe, someone alive today knows it. For all the speculation, one fact cannot be forgotten. Maura Murray was not just a mystery. She was a person, a daughter who laughed with her father, a sister who shared secrets with her siblings, a friend who smiled, studied, ran, and dreamed. Her story should not be reduced to theories and timelines. Her story is also one of love, of potential, of humanity, and that is her truest legacy. In many ways, Maura's case represents every unsolved mystery. It embodies the pain of families who wait for answers. It reflects the fear of those who know someone can vanish without a trace. It shows us how fragile life can be, how quickly the ordinary can turn into the unexplainable. Maura Murray became more than a missing person. She became a symbol for all the missing. And yet, even now, hope remains. Because cases once thought unsolvable have found resolution decades later. Bodies once lost have been discovered. Families once broken have received answers. It can happen. It has happened. And it could still happen for Maura. As long as her story is told, as long as her name is spoken, the chance for truth survives. Narrator. On February 9, 2004, Maura Murray stepped into the night and vanished. For 20 years, her story has haunted the White Mountains. For 20 years, her family has carried the weight of silence. For 20 years, strangers have searched for answers. And still, the question echoes. Where's Maura Murray? We may not know tonight. We may not know tomorrow. But we cannot stop asking. Because Maura's story is not just hers. It belongs to all of us. To anyone who has ever loved, ever lost, ever hoped for answers in the face of darkness. And if you are watching this now, you are part of that story. Share her name. Share her face. Share her story. Because someone, somewhere, knows the truth. And until that truth is found, Maura's voice cannot rest. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Keep Maura's memory alive. Talk about her. Share this video. And remember that every unsolved case deserves justice. Every missing person deserves to be found, and every family deserves the truth. Because silence is the enemy of justice. And together, we can keep the search alive.